Well, we're going to call in about 2 minutes till. So this is America Free Radio. Here we go. We'll try this. We're streaming live on YouTube, so give it about 1 minute and we'll be sound on, ready to go. Give a chance for the YouTube to populate. There we go. All right, notifications have gone out. Music should be starting right about now. And we'll be live in 3 minutes with America Free Radio, the voice of the revolution.
Of everything that we offer. So, folks, keep your data safe for your peace of mind. Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. You don't need to expect us. We're already here.
This is the people's war. It is our war. We are the fighters. Fight it then. Fight it with all that is in us. And may God defend the right.
Warning! Warning!
We gotta stop them! They're gonna kill us all!
See how the trouble you've started?
Be they the government, be they industry, be they organized labor, be they anyone, or human beings. Time when the operation of the machine becomes so odious, makes you so sick at heart that you can't take part. You can't even passively take part. And you've got to put your bodies upon the gears and upon the wheels, upon the levers, upon all the apparatus, and you've got to make it stop. And you've got to indicate to the people who run it, to the people who own it, that unless you're free, the machine will be prevented from working at all.
Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com, the #1 listener-supported talk radio station, throwing ourselves upon the gears of the machine. Revolution Radio, where information never sleeps.
You called down the thunder, well now you got it. Right, you tell them I'm coming, and hell's coming with me, you hear? Hell's coming with me.
Revolution Radio. All right. Thanks for listening while we take that short break here at Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. And now we're going to get back to your host.
Everyone to America Free Radio. This is the Revolution Radio Network. Actually, I should say it this way, Revolution Radio. And I am the voice of the revolution. So this is week 2 of America Free Radio on the Revolution Radio Network at freedomslips.com. Thank you, everyone. We're YouTube Live this week instead of the other live service. Give you a chance to join us and help us out on YouTube. Thanks, everyone, for coming in. Terry and Witchy and Piper and Agatha, you're all out there. And don't forget to tell your friends about us. As we grow, all the notifications are going out there, and we're letting it populate. So let's get started. We've got 2 hours, and we have a lot to get through. And I want to try to set this up because this is kind of where the past meets the future. I want to talk about the end of the First Civil War. This puts things a little bit into perspective for us. Sometimes you don't get all the history in your government schools. You know, November 12th, 1864, things began to change. Major General William T. Sherman ordered the destruction of the business district in Atlanta, and the Union Army started their march to the sea, which, by the way, ended just before Christmas in Savannah, Georgia. The march, also known as the Savannah Campaign, bolstered the Union Army and helped lead to the surrender of the Confederacy and the end of the Civil War 5 months later. Just to kind of put this into perspective, you know, up until Gettysburg, the North lost every single encounter with the South. The South won everything. Once they evicted, bloodlessly I might add, evicted the Union Army from Fort Sumter, the South pretty much maintained its freedom and independence. They declared their independence from America and formed the Confederate States as a result of a campaign which began in 1853. Back up just a little bit. In 1848, the Democrat National Committee was formed. The Democrat Party came into being from the Anti-Federalists. 5 years later, they began passing tariffs against the South. Didn't have anything to do with slavery. It had to do with taxation without representation. The South didn't want to pay. They were having to pay on their exports going to Europe because they made a lot more cotton and rum and other things that the North didn't consume everything that they made. So they traded it to Europe. So the North, the federal government, began taxing that as it left the country. Then, when those things were converted into finished goods coming back from Europe, they taxed the goods coming back in. Well, the South petitioned over and over and over again in Congress. Their congressmen went to the House floor and petitioned against these confiscatory tariffs. But the other 7 states, which made up a lot more of Congress because they had a lot more population, they wouldn't let up. And so that lasted for about 8 years. 1861, the South decided to separate itself from the North, and they began running the blockades that the North had set up trying to collect those taxes. So the North lost every single skirmish up to Gettysburg. Then they lost due to now we know, a fateful charge of Pickett in that battle, and the North won that battle. President Lincoln took advantage of it. Of course, buried all the dead, but put white headstones on each one of the graves, built a stage, and a few months later had his giant meeting at which he made his famous 84-word speech 7 years ago, blah, 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 and the investors came in droves. Now, I tell a story in my book, Charm a Favor, about Abraham Lincoln walking out on his porch one day to talk to a colonel who was talking about making this march through the South to basically raise it. I don't mean raise it, I mean burn it to the ground. Not in the classic sense, you don't raise a barn, you raise a barn by burning it to the ground. And Lincoln kind of knew it was necessary, but he told him a story. He said, see that stump out there in the yard? Used to be a big oak tree right here beside the house. Came out on the porch one day, and a squirrel ran across the yard, up that tree, and right down inside. And then I knew that old oak tree was hollow. Come a storm, that tree was going to fall on my house. So I knew I had to cut that oak tree down. You know what, Colonel? The colonel said, "What, Mr. President?" "I wish I'd never seen that squirrel." So now you know the decision that Lincoln had to make. He had to destroy the South in order to bring it into submission. So during the Civil War, Atlanta served as the hub for the Confederacy and a major transportation link for supplies and troops between the eastern seaboard and the West. After a 5-month successful campaign from Tennessee through northwest Georgia, Union troops made their way to the doorstep of Atlanta in mid-July. General John B. Hood decided to surrender the city and evacuate his Confederate troops on September 1st, 1864. Before leaving, Hood ordered the depots destroyed to prevent them from falling into the Union hands, and on September 2nd, Sherman captured the city, but with a tenuous supply line. He knew he couldn't hold it for long. Sherman divided his army into two, sending half toward Nashville while some 60,000 remaining troops would join him on a march across Georgia. Relying on his scorched earth policy, Sherman ordered that all railroads, factories, and commercial buildings be destroyed before leaving the city. He wanted to obliterate anything that might be of use to the Confederate Army. Sherman also ordered citizens out of their homes and businesses and destroyed them if they contained anything that might aid the Confederates. Before it was over, 40% of the city, an estimated 3,000 buildings, lie in ruins. Much of the destruction was in the business district around Peachtree Street. Private James H. Peterson from the 13th New Jersey Infantry recorded his observations in a pocket diary, and I quote, "On Sunday, November 15th, we left Atlanta. In going through the city, we passed large buildings on fire." Sherman and his army, now cut off from any supply lines, headed toward the coast. They lived off the land, taking supplies from fields and farms as they beat a pathway of destruction towards Savannah. Along the way, they encountered pockets of Confederate resistance and destroyed railroad tracks and cut telegraph lines. Private Peterson recorded that on November 26th, while he was skirmishing with the rebels at Saundersville, "I was wounded in the leg by a ball." Peterson ended up in a hospital outside of Savannah, where on December 10th he wrote about the approaching Union Army. "The troops burnt the Charleston and Savannah Railroad. We lay about 6 miles from Savannah in the field hospital. We can hear the cannon, the Savannah River, and the broad streets from the big guns very plain." On December 21st, after a march of 37 days and some 250 miles, Union troops entered Savannah just days before Christmas. Sherman sent a telegram to President Abraham Lincoln. "I beg to present you as a Christmas gift the city of Savannah with 150 guns and plenty of ammunition. Also about 25,000 bales of cotton." The destruction of Atlanta and Sherman's march to the sea demoralized the Confederacy and contributed to the end of the Civil War in April of 1865. Now, we've never really fought a war like this, not on the ground, not up close and personal, except American on American. This war was fashioned, put together, and made necessary by policies that were put in place by the Democrats designed to split the country apart. The reason I bring this up is because we are seeing exactly the same tactics being used in Washington right now. 63 million people on November 6th, 2016, elected President Trump. to be president. The statistics are quite astounding. As a statistician, I analyzed the growing Trump train, the Trump following prior to the election. In October of 2016, over a month before the election, I published that Donald Trump would win 311 electoral votes. I counted the states. How did I come up with that? Because I got a call from a pollster some months before. The pollster asked me the questions. I answered him, and I said, now I got a couple questions for you. First of all, why did you call me? And they said, well, you have a landline. I said, a landline? Why don't you call cell phones? Everybody's got a cell phone. And they said, because we need demographic data. We don't want to call somebody with a North Carolina phone number and them live in Atlanta. That's not going to give us the demographic information we're looking for. We need the landlines. I said, okay, thank you very much. I appreciate that. And then I called the phone company. I said, I have a couple questions for you. First of all, I need to know the percentage of AT&T customers that have a landline. And they said, well, about 15%. 85% of the people have turned off their landlines and opt to only have smartphones, only mobile phones, only cell phones. I said, that's interesting. Thank you very much for the information. So then I polled people that have landlines. I have several friends that have them. And I said, so what is the demographic here? Well, the demographic is over 63 years of age, are almost or do own their homes. They have cable and or satellite TV. So they get their news through cable or through satellite TV. So then I polled an equal number of smartphone owners. This is in 2016. You see that the demographic had changed. In 2012, in the midterm election of Barack Obama, there were a lot of smartphones. There were a lot of cell phones, but they hadn't actually turned into smartphones yet. We didn't have a Breitbart, a Drudge Report, a Newsmax, a WorldNet Daily. We didn't have established online news agencies that were actually competing or had more traffic than the TV news facilities did. But in 2016, we did. Because as I polled them, I asked them, where do you get your news? And they said exactly that. I get it from Drudge Report, from Breitbart, from WorldNet Daily, from Newsmax, from, OANN. I get it from all these different sources. But I don't get it from TV or from cable because I don't have a landline. I don't have cable. I don't have a satellite at home. I get everything off my smartphone, everything through Wi-Fi or internet. And then I asked them the all-important question, who are you voting for? Well, 78% of them were voting for Donald Trump. 78%. So I did the math. 78% of 85%, because 85% of the people have these smartphones, translated into 311 electoral votes. So I published it. Everybody laughed at me. They said, Hillary's going to win, hands down. She's going to win. It's going to be a landslide. I said, I don't think so. I think you're out of touch. I think your polls are missing the mark because you're not calling people with cell phones. You're only calling people with landlines. So you're only getting a certain demographic. You're getting a demographic that gets all their news from CNN, from ABC, from MSNBC. You're not getting mainstream America. And sure enough, on election night, I ticked off the states one by one by one. And the only state that I missed was New Mexico. New Mexico's 5 electoral votes. I thought they were surrounded by red and they would go red, and they didn't. They were the only blue state surrounded by red states. And as it turns out, they had 3 counties that had a little bit more registered voters at the end of the day, or voters at the end of the day, than they had registered voters. So it was rampant voter fraud in the small market of New Mexico, and it made an effect. And so Hillary won that state. But 306 electoral votes is not bad considering I predicted 311. So what we're talking about here is a large portion, a majority of the land mass of the country. I think it's 3,141 counties compared to 57 counties that Hillary Clinton won. A huge portion of the landmass compared to high density coastal cities, New York, LA, Houston, places like that. So by the time you figure that out, we have exactly the same kind of situation that we had in 1861. We have these high population, high density, high money, high Democrat, let's call them sanctuary cities, that are opposing Trump. And you have the rest of the country, I'm going to say now it's probably closer to 80 million people supporting Trump. So it's gone up. Yes, it has. It has gone up from 63 million to about 80 million because the minorities are doing very, very well, and they know which side their bread is buttered on, and it's not buttered on the Democrat plantation. I can guarantee you that. They are smart, and they know what's going on. So what we have here is we have a similar tension situation between the high population coastal sanctuary city type of areas. And by the way, there are 200 sanctuary cities across 28 states. And if you get right down to it, Chicago is Illinois, New York City is New York, Los Angeles is California. You get the drift of what I'm trying to say. These mega cities with their high density Democrat populations control the entire state as far as population. But as far as landmass, as far as cumulative Americanism, it is quite a bit different. And when you watched Sherman's tactics in those days, these are the tactics they had to use. They had to go from farm to farm, from town to town, from city to city, and had to burn everything that they didn't eat or couldn't carry with them. And this is the way that we practiced war since then. It's how we won wars. For instance, let's go back to World War II. The much reviled Germans did not wage this type of wanton total war and destruction against the valiant French during the Franco-Prussian War of 1871, whereas the Union and Confederate forces were steeped in common beliefs and patriotism up until the spring of 1861. The long antagonistic history between the German and the French peoples was a 1,000-year history of this. A 1,000-year history of violent death and destruction and revenge and prejudice. Why are Sherman's actions uplifted and praised by modern American academia instead of being heaped with disdain for the unnecessary suffering laid upon a completely overmatched and destitute people, upon their erstwhile brothers and countrymen that spoke the same language, had the same heritage, and had the same flag? Surely the near bloodless shelling of Fort Sumter in April of 1861 did not warrant the Lincoln-Grant-Sherman total war of 1863 to 1865. I say near bloodless. I mean, when the South bombarded Fort Sumter, nobody was hurt, not a scratch on a man. What happened was, after the night of bombardment, the fort was so tough it couldn't be penetrated. The commanding officer was allowed to take his soldiers and leave, but they wanted to do a 100-gun salute first, which they were allowed to do. They got to 49 guns, and they had a mishap. And one of the cannon operators was killed in their 100-gun salute. So they decided to make it 50. And they took their flag and they marched with only one casualty, their own, over the bridge to Northern Territory. That was it. That was it. And for that, Sherman, well, put it this way, 1 million Americans lost their lives. Yes, I know some 350,000 actually died during the war, but there were people that died from complications of the war afterwards, disease and complications from wounds. It was 1 million Americans, 1 million Americans, more than any other war we've ever had. And did the Democrats ever look back? No, they didn't. They shot the president too. Or I will put it this way, the president was shot. So what about this new American Civil War? Well, we're watching it. We're watching it unfold right now. I think Jim Jordan put it the best today when he said, well, we're here for impeachment part 4. They started the impeachment in July of 2016. By the way, the election was in November of 2016. So yes, we're in phase 4 of this coup d'etat, this attempt to overthrow 63 million Americans. With the media already consumed by the spectacle of the unfolding campaign and political leaders on both sides playing their base, which, by the way, I tried to watch today. I truly did, because it's my responsibility, being the voice of the revolution, to watch it. I couldn't do it. I could not do it. It was so revolting. It was so vile. It was so repulsive to watch the lies, to watch a legitimate question and a campaign speech, and a legitimate question and a campaign speech, and then a campaign speech, and then another one. And I just couldn't watch it anymore. I'm sorry. I just couldn't do it. You're going to have to get somebody else to watch it. And what were they doing? Oh, they weren't winning. No, they weren't winning. What they were doing is they were fundraising. Their people were across the street at the Rayburn building. Excuse me. Their people were across the street at the Rayburn building dialing for dollars. They were dialing. Are you watching? Are you watching CNN? We're doing great, aren't we? We need your money. We need your money. We got 12 hours to get this money together. Come on now. You got the texts on your phone too, didn't you? Didn't you? Right. American elections are supposed to be the mechanisms for resolving conflicts without resort to force or violence, and in their wake for helping victor and vanquished reconcile. Correct? That's our form of term limits. That's our form of victory. We don't take the old administration out in the back of the White House and shoot them in the head like they do in third world countries and banana republics. No. We say, well, we lost. We'll see you again in 2 years. We'll campaign again. We'll throw mud at each other, and we'll call each other names, and we'll raise money, and we'll run commercials, and we'll get PACs to run commercials. But we don't do that in this country. As Ronald Reagan said in the first inaugural address, this orderly transfer of authority is, in the history of our nation, a commonplace occurrence. And he was right to add that few of us stop to think how unique we really are, and we are in history. But you'll recall, after the bitterly contested 2000 election of Al Gore, eventually he conceded defeat, and that was it. He said, this is America, and we put country before party. We stand together behind our new president, and that was it. There were no riots. There was no war. There was no impeachment hearings, even though the Democrats have tried to impeach every single Republican president since Eisenhower. In fact, they might as well just have an impeachment department in their subcommittees, because this is what they do. But you'll recall that when President Trump gave his inaugural address to that enormous crowd, he said this, if I can recall it correctly: this is not the peaceful transfer of power from one party to another. This is the transfer of power from Washington, D.C. back to the American people. Well, I have to tell you, Earth explorers, that was a call to war. That was an act of war against the Democrats, because they weren't going to have the transfer of power from Washington back to the people. To them, that's tearing down their institutions. To them, that's tearing down our government. And you know what? It is. Donald Trump tore apart the Republican Party. They're still losing people. There are still Republicans saying, I'm not going to run again. I'm going to retire. I'm out of here. Why? Because they're the establishment. Because they're part of this deep state that lives off of you. And they're being replaced. They're being replaced by other Republicans that don't have that attitude. Other Republicans that believe in truth, justice, and the American way. Instead of truth and, okay, maybe truth as I know it, justice as long as it leaves me alone, and my way. I need the money. You know, I only get paid $174,000 a year, and you know, I may only serve 5 or 10 or maybe 12 or 20 years, but I need to pack it away while I can. We're going to talk a little bit more about that as the night goes on. But the Speaker of the House, who is now Nancy Pelosi, they squeaked out a 20-seat majority. 20 seats, 20 Democrats, that's it. 20. If we change 20 Democrat seats to Republican seats, this reign of terror is over. It's over. And as we see, it's okay for President Trump to tear up the Republican Party because that's just replaced by more Americans, by more conservatives. But you can't tear up the Democrat Party because they walk in lockstep. Oh, yes, they do. Yes, they do. Look at Tulsi Gabbard. Tulsi Gabbard. I drive by her billboard every day when I go to work. Tulsi Gabbard up there. So noble. You can almost see the helicopter in the background. But the issue is that she had a chance. She had a chance to distinguish herself. But she didn't. She didn't. She marched and voted in lockstep with the socialists. She voted in lockstep with the socialists when she voted in favor of impeachment inquiry. She could have lurched ahead of the other Democrats. She would have been right at the front of the pack if she would have just voted no. Would have made a difference? No, it wouldn't have made a difference at all. The Democrats were going to pass it down party lines no matter what. But Tulsi could have distinguished herself, and she didn't. She's a socialist, along with the rest of them, which kind of breaks my heart. Her being a very good serving, I think, in the reserves. I think she's doing a great job flying whatever she's flying, but I'm sorry. This country's never going to be a socialist country. So it is now very hard to imagine this graceful flow back and forth between liberal and conservative in our country, because it has become so nasty. And I don't mean nasty in the Me Too movement sense of the word. I mean nasty in the sense that it's vindictive, it's hateful, it is fearful, it is violent. It is violent. And that kind of brings me to this point where you have an epiphany, a realization. It looks like it will be an all too pertinent precursor of what is to come. Now, in the election of Abraham Lincoln and his willingness to let the South hold on to its slaves, it wasn't enough to prevent 7 southern states seceding before his inauguration in March of 1861. He inherited a mess. There's no doubt about that. But was war the right way to put the nation back together? Or was leadership in the Congress the right way to put it back together? The problem is that Abraham Lincoln wasn't really, American in a sense. I mean, today, more than 150 years after the Civil War, America is now again divided. It's never been more divided, I don't think. I know you're using the word diversity. Of course you are. Of course you are. But diversity comes from the root word divide. It comes from the root word divide. So what the left has done is they've taken America, which is all of us, Hispanics and blacks and Asians and Jews and Christians and everyone. Everyone is an American. Everybody works together. Everybody is red, white, and blue. And what they've done is they've divided us up again into peas and carrots and beef and potatoes and celery. We're now all these divided little groups, and we now each have our little, letter, our little LGBTQ, we have our own letter, and we're all represented, kind of in the big alphabet soup. But, and yes, it's okay, it's LGBTQ plus, and the plus is, well, one of the letters is M, and M stands for minor attracted, which are the pedophiles. Yes, it's true. Pedophiles are going to have a representation because you got to divide up everybody. You got everybody representation. The trouble is that if you give each one of these groups individually representation, you've basically divided the country back up into tribes. And now nobody has any voting power. It's like these countries that have 56 parties, running in the presidential election, and the winner has 11%. He's got 11%. And then they have a runoff, and the guy with 11% now has to win 51% in order to win. It's like that. It's like that. So you have a party that's put together with all these little letters in the alphabet, and what you don't have is America. You don't have America anymore. You've divided it all back up into the components that made the pot of stew, the melting pot. They were all together. You've separated everybody out again. And today we're divided by, I don't know, you name it, geography, party, color, sex, and ideology, and economics, and race. Don't forget race. And, even economic status, rich and poor and middle class and homeowners and apartment dwellers and homeless. We're divided up into all these little groups, and we're not Americans anymore. And that's the plan. Like the election of 1860, the forthcoming election in 2020 will be fought over the kind of existential questions which, in the mid-19th century, shattered this nation. As the 2020 campaign unfolds, candidates on both sides are offering dire predictions of what will result if the other side wins. And that's why this program, America Free Radio, has become the voice of the revolution. I don't mean the revolution to tear the country apart. I mean the revolution against the deep state that has been, that has taken us over. A revolution against the global syndicate that has moved in and taken control of our country. And when I say global syndicate, you know exactly what I'm talking about. We're talking about a global interest that has ruled this world for many thousands of years. It was often said, and if those of you, even if you came through government schools, you should have heard this. There was a time on this planet that the sun never sat on the British Empire. You know why? Because it was everywhere. Because the British Empire ruled the world with wooden ships, and one man, the king. And he ruled with an iron fist, and he collected taxes from everyone. And the people that he couldn't conquer, he addicted to drugs. He addicted nations to drugs. What do you think the Opium Wars was? The Opium Wars were against the British Empire for shipping refined opium into China to keep the nation stoned, where China didn't have to fight them. The Chinese tried to get themselves off the drugs twice, and the British sailed up their rivers and blew the crap out of them and forced them to take the finished opium again and again and again. Finally, the Chinese were able to wiggle out from underneath it. But this is the global syndicate. They ruled the world for thousands of years until 1787. And in 1787, a new nation was formed by the founding fathers who were well familiar with that world. They had already been there and seen that, been there, done that. They were educated men. But they were also thousands of miles away across a sea that they could defend, and they had all the resources in the world right here, and they didn't want to pay taxes on it anymore, and they wanted to own the land and sell the surplus. Capitalism is what founded this country, and it worked. It was based upon service to others. I have trees, I have corn, I have iron, I have leather, I have books, and you want them, and I will sell them to you, and you can pay me, and when my ship comes in, I will be wealthy, and I'll build myself a bigger place or a bigger family, or, build a town, build a church, build a bigger warehouse, a railroad, a telegraph. It's capitalism that saved the world. And you know who hated it? The global syndicate hated it. And what they decided to do in 1787, they said, all right, fine. So you have a republic, but you can't keep it. It was a republic, but it was supported by democratic principles, allowing people to vote. The trouble is that no democracy can survive. A republic can because it's representative, but a democracy cannot survive because what happens is the people begin voting for themselves a piece of the coffer, and it breaks the nation. It happens every single time. That's why democracy doesn't work. But a republic will work because now you have a representative government. And if you don't have taxation without representation, you'll be okay. Well, they let it go. And guess what? America prospered. America prospered. What is that you say, Monica? It's all part of the plan against the human. Heading into AI, heading into artificial intelligence. We must hold on to our humanity, our beautiful, beautiful humanity. It's worth the light. I do not submit. I agree, Monica. I absolutely agree. If you're in the YouTube chat room, you can put your chats over here. And don't forget, by the way, Top Chat is working down there at the bottom. You see that little square with the dollar sign? That's called Top Chat. You can click on that, and you can help us keep the lights on here. And don't forget that Revolution Radio is the world's #1 listener-supported radio network. We have so many hosts. They have 2 studios, Studio A and Studio B. We're in Studio A every Wednesday night at 8 p.m. till 10 p.m. And you can go there and you can support that network. You're doing the world a great service. Now, you know and I know that the federal government takes a little bit of your check every single Friday, and they do what they want to do with it, not what you want to do with it. And I'm saying, take control, America. Do with your money what you want done with your money. Put a monthly donation in there for Revolution Radio and help keep the lights on. If 10,000 people do it, we're home free. Home free. Anyway, you put your ideas in the chat room, and if I see it, I'll put it up there. Thanks, Jerry. He says, I agree with Pantry Rants. Brooks, do you have any information on Project Looking Glass? Yes, I do. Yes, I do. Hold on just one moment. I'll talk about that in a little bit. So here we are. Democrats denounce the president's tweets because they don't like him to communicate directly with the people. And you recall that in 1812, after the global syndicate let us have our own way for a little while, they came back. They came back because Andrew Jackson said he wasn't going to have any central bank. You're not going to control our money. And so they came back and we fought another war. Except this time, America had the ships. America had the tall pines that made the tall masts, and they had the fast schooners. And this time they fought to a stalemate. We didn't win the war, but we didn't lose the war. And what happened was America and Britain decided to leave each other alone. So that was the end of the War of 1812. And then we went to 1861. We just talked about that war, how devastating that was. And when that didn't work, when the nation was still brought back together again, we learned to fly in 1906. And in 1915, we were blowing the crap out of each other again. And that war lasted for 30 years, from 1915 to 1945, actually 1914 to 1945. And then we had a permanent war culture established, and the global syndicate used that to take over Europe, and we already saw what happened. All of Europe, half of Europe was taken because of the work that the Soviets did after they infiltrated the Roosevelt White House. Roosevelt established a fascist government inside this country, which we've effectively been living under since 1933. It's only grown. I mean, he started out with the Department of the Interior and a few other things, and now it's grown into 650 agencies, departments, bureaus, and administrations that assess all our taxes, write all our laws, take all the police actions and confiscatory actions against us, take all of our money, and spend it all. Except we have no representation in that government. We have no vote in that government. The two guys that were testifying today at this sham of a trial or sham of a hearing that's taking place in Congress run by Shift for Brains, those two guys, they're lifelong bureaucrats. They've been there through 5 presidents. Taylor served in Vietnam as a rifleman, as a commander. He's been around a long time. They're professionals. They're supposed to be apolitical. This is the deep state. This is actually the deep state arm of the global syndicate. And the global syndicate's the same people. It's the same players. Oh, you wonder how long they've been around? That's a very good question. Let me put it into perspective for you. Does the name Abu al-Baghdadi ring a bell to you? Yes? Yeah. Well, he was in the news recently, right? Chased down a cave by the dog. Until I learned the dog was a female dog, I just had to say, who's a good boy? Yeah, chased Baghdadi down a hole, made a wrong turn, blew himself up. That was the end of him. But you heard what the press said, right? The press called him, a religious scholar, a cleric, everything except a rapist, a murderer, every despicable name in the book, which he probably deserves more than that. But we've heard this story before. We've heard this story before by the same exact players. You recall a man named Pontius Pilate, kind of a feckless governor of a problematic state that they kind of taxed here and there when they could, Jerusalem. Well, Pontius Pilate's wife told him to not lay a hand on Jesus, that he was a good man and they should let him go. Pontius Pilate knew of the local custom that right before Passover, they could free a prisoner. Just let him go, kind of clemency right before, as a good gesture by the occupying government. And so Pilate decided to take Abu al-Baghdadi out of prison, a murderer, a rapist, a terrorist, a liar, a counterfeiter, a thief, brought him out on stage and said, "Who shall I set free? Jesus, who has hurt nobody, only blessed people, never harmed a being as long as he's lived, or Barabbas?" And situated throughout the crowd were the Pharisees, the Sadducees, the scribes, with their phylacteries on their forehead. No, that's a phallus. No, a phylactery. A phylactery is like a box, and you wear it on your forehead with a strap. And inside the box are little tiny rolled up scrolls of the book of Deuteronomy. You memorize them. And if you have a big phylactery, it tells people that see you how wise you are, that you've memorized so much of Deuteronomy, and you carry the scrolls around in this box on your forehead. And so the outward appearance is you're such a holy man because you have all these memorized things. The point is, these guys were spaced throughout the crowd, and they knew exactly what to do. They shouted the name Barabbas. Well, the ordinary people that could barely read or write, they were there for the entertainment value of what was going to happen right before the Passover. They kind of got the message. Oh, I was going to say Jesus, but since you're saying Barabbas, I guess I will too. And pretty soon the whole crowd shouted Barabbas. And what did Pontius Pilate do? But I held the vote. I don't have anything to do with this. I'm going to wash my hands of this. This is up to you. And so they let Barabbas go. The press did exactly the same thing. They let al-Baghdadi go. They wanted Trump. Same crowd, same tactics, same global syndicate. Yes, it's been there for well over 2,000 years, and they're doing the same thing. So 2020 may go beyond nastiness and division and plunge America into a new level of disunion. If the president wins, despite maybe again losing the popular vote, although I don't think that's going to happen. I think it's going to be like 80 million or 90 million people this time. Will the Democrats, having lived through 4 years of a Trump presidency, accept the legitimacy of his reelection? A show of hands. I'm afraid you're probably right. And if a Democrat wins, will the president claim that the election was rigged and refuse to relinquish power? You know what? I don't know. On the one hand, I would say he would say the same as Pontius Pilate. You know what? I've had enough. I've had enough. I gave you my wages. I gave you $1 billion out of my back pocket. I gave you my time. My son missed me. My wife missed me. My kids miss me. All my businesses around the world miss me. And all you did is beat me up for it. I love America, but I love my family. You can have this crap. I'm going to Florida to golf. Or he could say, I came here to do a job, and the job's not done yet, and I'm a finisher. Hard to say. What would you do? 63 million, 73 million, 83 million, 93 million Americans. What would you do? Would you accept a rigged election? Yeah, okay. Okay, Pantry says, I'm registering to vote for the first time to vote for Trump. See? There you go. The CIA shed a single tear that day. Yeah, I can see that because their al-Baghdadi was dead. Now what are we going to do? I appreciate all the interaction to it. It helps a lot. We're going to take a break here in about 6 minutes. So listen, I want to tell you about an app. It's our sponsor. Let me see if I can get to it here really quick. I'm almost there. The app is called WowieTell, and I know you've probably used apps before. You probably used the W app, the S app, the P app, the T app. I'm not going to name them. But the issue is you can't call somebody unless they have the same app as you, right? I mean, you can't just call their phone number. But with WowieTell, I'm just going to put this up here real quick. You can see it, WowieTell.com, and the promo code is BA2019. If you go to WowieTell.com, promo code BA2019, capital B, capital A, you'll see that icon. Put that on your phone. You can get it for iPhone. You can get it for Android phones. The other party doesn't need the app. You can call any number in the world, limitless, as many times as you want. All you need is the country code and call. You know, it means a lot Maybe not with family. With family, they're going to go ahead and add the app, and you can call them for free on Skype. And you can put up with the drop calls or the warbly sound or whatever. But if you're in business, if you're doing business and you're calling Australia or New Zealand or Germany or France or China, why require them to have that app on their phone? And by the way, those apps are not secure. The metadata is stored on both ends, and it is sold. They don't make any bones about it. But WowieTel doesn't save that stuff. You can call their phone direct, and it sounds like you're a big dog. You know why? Because it's a satellite connection. Super clear, super crisp, no drop calls, no security risks, one fee per month, and that's it. WowieTel. I use it. It's crystal clear. You should too. All right, let's get back to what we're talking about. I don't think that if Trump loses, if he loses the right way, if it's rampant voter fraud and it's 48 states of, ballots are us backing up to the ballots 2 weeks later and overturning one Republican district after another like they did in California, I think it's going to be pretty bad. I think you're going to see people show up at the polls at 12:01. As soon as the poll closes, there are no more votes going to be brought in there. No more votes. There's going to be no enterprise trucks backing up with ballots are us and unloading all these pre-printed ballots. That's not going to happen. That they're going to be stopped. Those ballots are going to be stopped. And it's going to happen state after state after state. And that's maybe why this voice of the revolution is here, because that's what it's all about. I want a peaceful revolution. I want the global syndicate defeated. So the moderators in the next Democratic presidential debate should press candidates to say whether they are ready to accept the legitimacy of a president they call a racist threat to our way of life. I don't think they're going to do that. Republican leaders need to acknowledge that Trump might not leave the office willingly. I think he would if the election was legit, if everything was treated well, all the elections were certified. If Trump gets beat, he'll go. That's America. That's the way it goes. I think that we have a serious challenge on our hands because we know that this voter fraud is rampant. It's not an isolated case here and there. It's rampant. And I will tell you that some big changes are being made. Michael Savage talked recently about he thinks we're in for decades of darkness. I called into Alex Marlowe's program yesterday and said, I tend to agree with that because Americans have lost their faith in the rule of law. And even more sad, other nations have lost their faith in our rule of law. And it is time we need a day of justice. Now, I have some news I'm going to share with you after the break. We'll take about a 3-minute break and we'll be back at the top of the hour. That the Horowitz report is now calling for the final witnesses to come in and sign off. Once they sign off on that, it is going to be made public, and it is not going to be a good day for the Democrats. It's not going to be a good day for some Republicans. There's a tremendous amount of fraud, and I mean, when you talk about fraud in a courtroom, it's a big deal. When you submit false information to a judge to pull a warrant, somebody's going to jail. Somebody's going to jail. That's a federal crime, especially when it's used in the FISA court. And that's exactly what happened, and that's what's going to be revealed. And then you have Durham. Durham's indictments are underway, and so are Huber's, and you're going to see the rule of law and the day of justice come. We will talk more about this right after the break. Don't forget, we are on YouTube Live right now. Next week, I think we're going to have a call-in line, because I think it's about time to make this a live call-in show. Keep the chat going. I'll switch over to my break screen here in about 15 seconds, and then we will talk about they who lie in wait to deceive. We'll be right back after this. More America Free Radio on the Revolution Radio Network. Okay, welcome back to America Free Radio. We are here live on the Revolution Radio Network, and you can join us on YouTube Live. Next week, we hope to have live call-in. Let me go ahead and bring this up. I want to talk for 1 minute about my live success mentoring class. I'll be teaching in Seattle on January 11th. Now, this is not like an ordinary conference, okay? You go to a conference, you see me for 90 minutes, and you see a bunch of other speakers, and it costs you like $1,000 or $1,200 to go, and you got to fly, and you got to get a hotel and all that stuff. You don't have to do that. I'm going to come to you. So if you're in Seattle, I'm going to come to you on the 11th. Well, I'm hoping that the music's over. I can't ever tell on this network. I'm going to have to figure out a way to figure that out. But I wanted to let you know that on the 11th of January, I'll be in Seattle. And this is not an ordinary conference where it costs you $1,000 or $1,500, airfare and hotel and car rental and all that stuff, and you only see me for 90 minutes. I'm coming to you. I'm coming to you in Seattle. I'll be there for 5.5 hours. You get me. So you get the 90-minute lecture, you get a 1-hour group mentoring, you get 1 hour of meditation training, and then each of those 8 groups, we divide you into 8 groups. One person in each of those 8 groups gets me for 15 minutes, one-on-one, face-to-face, ask me anything. And there are other things that you can get there. I will help you with your business plan, your pro forma, a patent application if you need to. This is really, really success mentoring. Yes, it's coaching, but I am going to mentor you using my 35 years of experience helping the Fortune 500 make billions of dollars and create tens of thousands of jobs. I'm going to help you with your second chance at success. All you have to do is go to my website, which is brooksagnew.com, brooksagnew.com. Click on the Success Mentoring link and go down to the bottom and find your city. Seattle's there, Charlotte's there, Phoenix is there. And if your city's not listed, don't worry about it. There's a form there. You can put your city in it, and you can figure out. I'll show you how you can get free admission to the whole thing. Tickets are available on Eventbrite. So I want you to be there with me. Okay, let's get back to it. By most everyone's judgment, the Senate is not going to vote to remove President Donald Trump, right? I mean, you believe that. I believe that. I think we're pretty comfortable with what's being said there. I would get a lot of people that are saying, you know what? 67% of the Senate has to vote. Nah, that's never going to happen. Not going to happen. But what if senators could vote on impeachment by secret ballot? If they didn't have to face backlash individually from their constituents or the media or the president himself, who knows how many Republican senators would vote to remove him? A secret impeachment ballot might sound really, really crazy, but it actually is quite possible. In fact, it would take only, I bet you don't know the number, three senators to allow for that possibility. You see, Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell has said he will immediately move to hold a trial to adjudicate the articles of impeachment if and when the Senate receives them from the House of Representatives. Why? They didn't do it under Clinton. They said, Chris Dodd said, we're not having that here. And they just never heard it. That was it. Clinton was impeached, but there was never a trial in the Senate, ever. See, here's the deal. Article 1, Section 3 of the Constitution does not set very many parameters for the actual trial. Okay, it just says, trial, but it doesn't set the structure. The only thing it says is that the Chief Justice shall preside, and no person shall be convicted without the concurrence of 2/3 of the members present. The members present. That means the Senate has sole authority to draft its own rules for the impeachment trial without judicial or executive branch oversight, right? Well, when Bill Clinton was impeached, the rules were hammered out by Democrats and Republicans in a collaborative process. That ain't going to happen. Trent Lott, Tom Daschle, that's never going to happen. Not this time. This time, given the polarization that now defines our politics, Mitch McConnell and his fellow Republicans are much more likely to dictate the rules with little input from Democrats. But they lie in wait to deceive. You see, according to Senate procedure, McConnell will still need a simple majority, 51 of the 53 Senate Republicans, to support any resolution outlining rules governing the trial, right? Not 2/3, 51, including the vice president, right? That means that if only 3 Republican senators were to break from the caucus, because you got 53, right? 3, bringing it to 50. They could block any rule they didn't like. So Vice President Mike Pence can't break ties in impeachment matters. That's not allowable. So these 3 senators, in turn, could demand a change in the rules. If they demanded a secret ballot and conditioned their approval of the rest of the rules on getting one, some might say transparency in congressional deliberations and votes is inviolable. And it's true that none of the previous Senate impeachments have been conducted via secret ballot. But The Senate's role in an impeachment is analogous to a U.S. jury, right? Well, secret ballots are often used in juries. Absolutely. In fact, they're almost always used because the speaker of the jury comes forward and says, we find the defendant, not guilty, right? They don't actually say, I down the juries. When Electoral College gridlock has resulted in the House picking the president, the House elected Thomas Jefferson in 1800 and John Quincy Adams in 1824. That vote was in secret. And of course, when citizens vote for president, they do so in private, right? That's not a public vote. It's a private vote. You draw the curtain, you vote in secret. Trump and those around him seem confident he's not going to lose the 20 Republican senators needed to block any guilty verdict. Yes, guilty. But it is not hard to imagine 3 senators supporting a secret ballot. And that changes everything. Because 5 sitting Republican senators have already announced their retirements. 4 of those are in their mid-70s and older and will never run for office again. They might be willing to demand secrecy in order to give their cover to their colleagues who would like to convict Trump but are afraid to do so because of politics in their home districts. There are also 10 Republican senators who aren't up for re-election until 2024 and who might figure Trumpism will be irrelevant by then if they could do away with him. Senators Mitt Romney, Lisa Murkowski, they've also been the most vocal Republicans in expressing concern about Trump's behavior toward Ukraine. Susan Collins, other GOP senators have recently softened in their defense of Trump as well, all before the House has held any public hearings. Well, now the public hearings are going on. Now there's public speculation that should the Senate choose to proceed with the secret ballot, Trump would be found guilty. GOP strategist Mike Murphy said recently that a sitting Republican senator had told him 30 of his colleagues would vote to convict Trump if the ballot were secret. Well, former Senator Jeff Flake topped that, saying he thought 35 Republican senators would vote that way. Now, while it's unlikely Trump would support a secret ballot, it's possible he might actually benefit from one in the long run. If a secret ballot is agreed on and Trump knows the prospect of impeachment is near, he could then focus his energies on his post-presidency. Once he leaves office, Trump faces multiple possible criminal investigations at the federal, state, and local level. He almost certainly knows that a President Pence would pardon him only for federal crimes. To avoid the prospect of serving time, Trump could negotiate a collective settlement, just as the Sackler family had done in the OxyContin matter, with all the jurisdictions now running independent investigations into his activities. Trump's impeachment, followed by a quick resignation, might appease Manhattan District Attorney Cyrus Vance and New York Attorney General Letitia James' thirst for blood, making them more likely to agree to a deal. Even Mitch McConnell might privately welcome the prospect of a secret ballot. He has always been intently focused on maintaining his Republican majority in the Senate. A secret ballot might get Trump out of office sooner than everyone expects. The sooner any 3 Republican senators make it clear they will support nothing short of a secret ballot, the sooner Trump realizes his best course would be to cut a deal, trading his office for a get-out-of-jail-free card, a clean slate from prosecutors, just as Vice President Spiro Agnew, no, he was not related to me, did. And if Trump were to leave office before the end of the year, there might even be enough time for Republicans to have a vibrant primary fight, resulting in a principled Republican as the nominee. They lie in wait to deceive. Yeah, I thought that would get the chat room moving. Yeah, what will stop them from fixing the 2020 election? I agree with you, Chuck Barn. I agree with you, but I think that is ongoing. And here's why. No. It's not the wall. It's not, converting the dollar to gold. It's not undoing the Fed. None of that. No. I have 3 words for you. You'll know it right away when I say it. Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Yes, it's all about the Supreme Court. And guess what? She didn't show up for work today. You know why? Well, Chief Justice John Roberts announced that Ruth Bader Ginsburg was indisposed due to illness. Yep. And guess what it's for? A stomach bug. This is a woman that has been treated multiple times for pancreatic cancer, stomach cancer. She has a cancerous tumor on her pancreas. It is absolutely incurable, and it can take you pretty quickly. It's taken lots and lots of people before her. If Ruth Bader Ginsburg is incapacitated or she dies during Trump's presidency, he will replace her. He will appoint a conservative, probably Amy, to take her place. And when that happens, it's going to change the Supreme Court for 40 years. It will be 1 to 2 generations before liberals can take control of the Supreme Court again. And yes, there are several decisions that are coming down the pike that would make a big difference in the way things work. For one thing, all the babies we murder every year. It would help a Republican or conservative or libertarian president or legislators to pass laws which would get things like a balanced budget in place, to put the wall in place, to start moving some of these criminal illegal aliens out of our country, to do away with sanctuary cities because of the supremacy clause that would be interpreted by a conservative Supreme Court on the side of the federal government, overruling the states being able to create sanctuary cities, thus safe havens for criminal or illegal criminals, illegal alien criminals, foreign citizens voting in our elections. It could also stimulate the Convention of States, which you see here on my hat, which is the Article 5 convention in the Constitution. So all of these things could come in place. And there's one other thing, because as you know, the day of justice is coming. The Department of Justice is going to come down with indictments. And it's going to be for a variety of things. We're already seeing the pedophiles being picked up. We're seeing the child trafficking being clamped down on. We're seeing the illegal drugs and the cartels being trimmed. I explained to you already what happened when Baghdadi, we could not find him for a long time. For 3 years, we've been hunting for him. He was very good at evading us. Trump pulled back the few American troops we had in the area, which meant Turkey could then move on the area, which was going to put a squeeze on al-Baghdadi being able to move drug profits through the banking system, through the SWIFT system, to the deep state players all around the world, some of which are in the Democrat Party. As soon as that happened, within days of that happening, Pelosi and Schiff petitioned to make a trip to Jordan. It wasn't approved right away, but then it was approved. It took a jet. They flew over there. They met with King Hussein of Jordan. Now, of course, they were trying to make a public show of it, like, hey, won't you condemn the president pulling the troops out of Syria? King Hussein said, no way. We like that idea. Get out of here. You know, we got it from here. But they also contacted a courier. The courier took a message, and the courier was followed, and the courier went straight to al-Baghdadi. As soon as al-Baghdadi was located, the special forces put their trip together, their resources together, got their clearances together, and they went in and they killed him a few hours later. Now, that is what really made Pelosi and Schiff nervous. As soon as they got back to the States, I mean, as soon as she could drink her jet lag away, she was bouncing all around Washington trying to pull together the votes to get this impeachment inquiry hearing going that you're seeing right now, this Schiff show that you see going in Congress. All this is part of that. All this is part of that. But why? Why the panic? Because they killed Baghdadi? Well, yeah, maybe. They killed him. They killed the 2 women. But remember the Sunday morning when Trump came out, the speech that he made? Yes, that's right. Trump said, oh, by the way, we got a ton of intel out of that compound. Because you see, the 2 women that were helping with the 11 kids, the 2 women were incapacitated before they could blow up their vests that they were wearing. They were not able to destroy the evidence. And so special forces took several hours and they scooped all that stuff. All the laptops, all the paper records, all the PDAs, all the phones, everything was collected. And when Trump said, by the way, we got tons of intel out of that compound, that is when Pelosi and Schiff went on the offensive. Why? Because all the bank records are there. Everything that ensures Baghdadi his value. They can't take him out at any time because he has all this information. It's now in the hands of the military. It's now in the hands of Huber. It's now in the hands of Durham. It's now in the hands of the military, and they are doing their investigations, and they're following the money as fast as they can, and we know where it's going to lead. We know where it's going to lead. It's going to lead to places like the Baltimore gang. What's the Baltimore gang? I'm glad you asked. You know, Elijah Cummings, he ended up taking the dirt nap. Now, we didn't even know he was sick. I mean, the news media should have come out and said, hey, Elijah's in a hospice and he might not make it through the night. But they didn't. Suddenly, he just dies. Like, we didn't even know the guy had a fever and he's gone. Well, I told you a couple of weeks ago this would happen. Now, Maya Cummings, his wife, said 2 days ago that she's still grieving the loss of her husband, but is determined to press forward by running for his office. She said, I'm going to run this race and I'm going to run it hard, as if he's still right here by my side. Now, the Maryland Democrat Party chairwoman also vowed to continue pushing back against the Trump administration's policies. She said, I'm a fighter, I don't shy away from the labels, blah, blah, blah. But see, Cummings had represented Maryland's 7th congressional district since 1996. That's a long time, isn't it? 23 years. The 68-year-old died of health complications on October 17th, which was less than a month ago. They had been laundering federal tax money through a collection of nonprofits and shell corporations to maintain their lavish lifestyle and keep their cronies rich. Well, once Maya Cummings told MSNBC's Rachel Maddow that in the months leading up to her husband's death, he told her, and this is where it comes from, get ready for it, I really do think you should take this seat. It would not be the first time a sitting congressman willed his seat and committee chair to his partner. Murkowski did it. Dingell inherited his office from his father. Jackie Speier received her office from her assassinated boss and alleged lover, Congressman Leo Joseph Ryan Jr., who was shot to death at Jonestown on November 8, 1978. By the way, she remains on the House Armed Services Committee, although all of her data in and out of her computer and cell phone was cloned to Pakistan by the Awan gang. By the way, we still haven't heard what's going to happen there. She said, he would expect it of me, and I'm going to continue the fight. Well, I got to tell you, she actually has no choice but to run for the office or face charges of fraud, embezzlement, and money laundering. It turns out many people are aware of this weakness in her survival plan, because Maya Cummings is not the only one who wants to take her late husband's place in Congress. 3 Republicans and 8 Democrats officially filed for the special election, which is scheduled for April 28th. The winner will complete Cummings' term, which ends in January of 2021. The deadline to file is November 20th, which is about 7 days from now. So it should be quite fun to watch. You see, the main issue centers around evidence of hundreds of millions of missing dollars, maybe even as much as 1.8 or maybe 15 or is it 18 billion dollars sent to Baltimore by Elijah Cummings in earmarked grant funds and federal loans. Initial investigations showed that the money went to family members, like $800,000 to Maya Cummings. She had a one-person nonprofit firm for her self-published books. That was a sweet deal, wasn't it? She was the only employee of the nonprofit. And there was another $300,000 given to a foundation called the Hispanic Awareness Foundation. It was basically a two-man show, relatives of a Baltimore City Council member. And the list goes on, and it's enormous, and it funnels enough money to make several dozen members of the Baltimore gang multi-millionaires. Maya Cummings' campaign website states that she has devoted her life's work to honoring the sacrifices of the past by pushing for a more equal and inclusive future that expands opportunities for all. What a bunch of crap. And the site also continues. Throughout her life, Maya's driving principle has been to create more equal and inclusive society for everyone in her family and her friends. Everyone else in Baltimore picked crumbs with the sparrows and fought the rats for the rest. She has devoted her career to closing racial, socioeconomic, and gender disparities to create opportunities for every single American. I'm sorry, I can't read that propaganda bullcrap. Not going to happen. She told The Sun this campaign procedure is going to keep her off the campaign trail for at least 4 weeks. Let's see, she's having a preventive double mastectomy. That's what that is. She's going to take the time to heal and to do what I can behind the scenes to make sure my campaign is strong. It's going to be a sprint election, she said. So the Baltimore gang is a typical example of what's going on out there in these big cities: Chicago, Boston, Los Angeles, San Francisco, Seattle. The list goes on and on and on, and they have been doing it for a long, long time. And we, the American people, are pretty sick of it, don't you think? I think we are. We really, really are tired of this. Let's see here. I'll switch screens here. The chat room's still going up there. Let's see what we got out here. Oh, we got Hitchhiker. We got Nikita. We got Pantry Rants. We got Hitchhiker. Lots of good comments out there. I wish I could read them all. Who is running against her? Well, I don't really know. There are 3 Republicans, 8 Democrats. In the next month or so, we should see this solidify. I wouldn't vote for Maya Cummings for love nor money, because once she gets in, she's going to cover those tracks. Everybody that could leak that money out is going to be gone, and the money is going to be transferred to other nonprofits because they're big proponents of the Clinton School of Self-Enrichment, and they have mastered the process. They've laundered a lot of money through Baltimore, and the people of Baltimore didn't see a penny of it. And that's, yeah, exactly. I get that. All right. I want to talk a little about voter fraud off the meds. We remember late in 2016, if you recall, there were 9 districts in California that were won by Republicans on election night. 2 weeks later, all 9 of those Republicans lost their races as Ballots R Us was able to deliver enough ballots to vanquish their advantage. Several other races came in that were, 16, 18, 20, 30,000 votes ahead for the Republican, and 2 weeks later, they lost by a couple hundred votes. We we created a stir by suggesting Donald Trump was likely right when he claimed that millions of non-citizens had illegally voted in the U.S. election. Not many people like to hear that. They thought, oh, it was fringe, it was conspiracy theory, it was not very widespread. But last November, just weeks after his Electoral College win that gave him the presidency, Donald Trump tweeted this: "In addition to winning the Electoral College in a landslide, I won the popular vote if you deduct the millions of people who voted illegally." Oh, wow. That really riled up a bunch of people. They hit the trail, and they hit it hard. And it was kind of a Twitter-born conspiracy theory, they called it. Now, at the time, we noted that a group called True the Vote, which is an online anti-voter fraud website, had claimed that illegals had cast 3 million votes in 2016. It probably did more than that. But the media and, of course, the left-wing groups immediately portrayed the True the Vote people as a fringe group with no credibility. In fact, I think I remember hearing that echo in my ears: no credibility, no credibility, no credibility. Very, very interesting to watch that. The only problem is that a study way back in 2014 in the Online Electoral Studies Journal made a quite similar claim, that not in the 2012 election, but in the 2008 and the 2010 elections, they said as many as 2.8 million illegal non-citizen votes were cast. Now, these are foreign citizens. They don't have any right to vote in our elections. They don't have access to our court systems. They are foreign citizens living inside this country. And that was enough to change meaningful election outcomes, including electoral college votes and congressional elections. And let's see, that goes back to the paper was authored by Jesse T. Richmond and Gushan A. Chathta, both of Old Dominion University, and David C. Ernest of George Mason University. No slouches. The bombshell was this, okay? Non-citizen votes likely gave Senate Democrats the pivotal 60th vote needed to overcome filibusters in order to pass health care reform and other Obama administration priorities in the 111th Congress. It almost got no coverage then. But that's what gave Obama the votes to overcome the Republican resistance. Now there's been a new study by an outfit called Just Facts. It's a libertarian conservative think tank that used data from a large Harvard U.gov study that every 2 years samples tens of thousands of voters, including some who admit they are non-citizens and thus can't vote legally. The findings are quite eye-opening. In 2008, as many as 5.7 million non-citizens voted in the election. In 2012, as many as 3.6 million voted. And in 2016, get ready for this. In 2016, the U.S. Census Bureau estimates there were 21 million adult foreign citizens in the U.S., which is up 19.4 million since 2008. It is therefore highly likely that millions and millions of non-citizens cast votes in 2016. And it was no accident. It was by design. Democrats had extensive get-out-the-vote campaigns in areas heavily populated by illegal aliens. And as far back as 2008, Obama made sure that those who wanted to vote knew it was safe. Nobody was going to prosecute them. Okay? And last year, the last year of the Obama White House, they supported a court injunction that kept Kansas, Alabama, and Georgia from requiring proof of citizenship to register to vote. Same thing in North Carolina. The message was sent loud and clear. If you're a non-citizen or you're here illegally, don't be afraid. You are free to vote. Nobody's going to stop you. And this was right from the top. We don't know the exact number of illegal votes. I don't think anybody does. But the data that are available suggests that the number of illegal votes was very substantial, probably in the tens of millions. But as Trump said, it's at least 3.6 million and likely had a significant impact on the election's outcome. And by the way, even Democrats should find this troubling. Every vote cast by a non-citizen voter negates the vote of you, a real citizen. So what is going to happen? What is going to happen this week as the shift show goes on and we see the press playing to it? I'm sure they're playing excerpts almost real time in the fake stream news. The investigation has now come to an end, and a new report declared Justice Department Inspector Michael Horowitz has reached a critical final step before releasing his findings on the FISA abuses. And those of you that are not familiar with what that is, that's the foreign surveillance judges. So what these are warrants that are obtained through a rotating set of judges. And what they do is they approve warrants for wiretaps. Let's just be simple about it. We'll just call it wiretaps. It means all kinds of things: emails, phone calls, listening devices in rooms, things like that. In those conversations, they may be talking to Americans. Well, the foreign people can be identified on the tape, but the Americans can only be identified as American 1, American 2, etc. To pull that warrant is a very big deal because it violates the fourth article of the Constitution. Article 4 of the Constitution says you are not to be illegal searched or surveilled. But that's exactly what the FISA court does, except that they surveil foreigners. Okay, it's the Foreign Surveillance Act. Now, what happens is they unmask the American and they use the foreigner as the grounds to pull that warrant. That's illegal. You can't do that. But that's exactly what they did. They submitted false information to FISA judges in order to pull a warrant. And that false information was crafted by a foreign government financed by one of the political candidates, which in this case was Hillary Clinton. So what's going to happen is he is going to release this report. And what he is doing right now, he is nearing completion. And how we know this is he's inviting people interviewed in the investigations and their lawyers to review a draft of the report. The reason this is important is when you are about to be indicted, it's usually not, secret. They don't come to your door, bust the door down and say, hey, you've been indicted for embezzlement. You're coming with us. The first thing the court does is they let you know that you are a target. You are a target of the investigation. And sometimes they let the lawyer come in and look at the evidence so the lawyer can say, yeah, I tell you what, Rocco, you need to lawyer up. You need to lawyer up because you're going to go to trial. And this is what's happening now. Those lawyers are being called in and they're going through it. So it was reported last week that a public copy was expected to be released about Thanksgiving or later. Horowitz provided an update to Congress on October 24th, saying a classification review by the Justice Department and the FBI was nearing completion. Now, Senator Grassley, and I share his apprehension that the longer Horowitz waits, the longer this process takes, the more likely it is there'll be a cover-up and these people will escape any prosecution. But, we'll see. We'll see what happens. If FISA Inspector General Horowitz's report doesn't come out in the next week, when they say it would, then I will be very disappointed and left to wonder what the game is. And I agree with Grassley. Republicans believe it will show top Justice Department and FBI officials misled the FISA court by using an unverified, I don't even want to call it a dossier. It was a rag. It was a rumor rag that was put together and financed by Hillary Clinton, and they call it a French name, a dossier, to give it a little bit of a, church it up a little bit. And Christopher Steele, which I still think is a movie name for a spy. I mean, who would have a kid named Christopher Steele? Oh, you're going to grow up to be a spy, aren't you? Yes, he did. And Carter Page and all these other people were wrongly accused of wrongdoings. Now, Horowitz announced the investigation in March of 2018, saying his review would examine the Justice Department and Federal Bureau of Investigation's compliance with the legal requirements. All of that is going to be out of whack. I think Horowitz is going to be pretty thorough on that. In addition, Horowitz said he would review the DOJ and FBI's relationship, and I think it's going to be bad. I think it's going to be very, very bad for the Democrats. And this in the same week that the Schiff Show is going on. The Schiff Show is going to bring in some more witnesses. Of course, none of them will be substantive. They'll all be hearsay. And what you're going to hear is the same exact thing we heard today. You're going to hear a question and a campaign speech, and a question and a campaign speech, and a question and a campaign speech. And it's all about fundraising because the Democrats know legally that they have nothing. I don't know if I can watch it. Yes, I get that. That's fine, Nikita says. That should be close enough. LOL, says Pantry Rates. Okay, well, and he also says, how long have you been on the other side of pre-approved ideas? Pre-approved by who? I didn't approve them. They're not approved here at America Free Radio. We are where the truth freaks hang out, okay? That's why this is the voice of the revolution. We are revolting. We are revolting against the globalist syndicate, and we are taking back our country. Sorry, that's just the way it is. We're going to do that. And I feel strongly about that. So I want to talk a little bit. We got about 20 minutes left, and I want to talk about the 5 worlds of existence. This is a little bit esoteric, but it's not too bad. It's a story that I wrote in 1976. I know that's a long time, like 3/4 of the way through the last century. And I wrote it in philosophy class. And what I wanted to do is classify the modes or the worlds that we as mortals tend to find ourselves. You can't find yourself in 2 worlds at one time, so you're in one of these at a time. They're not necessarily in order, like 1 through 5 in any specific numerical order, but they're different worlds that we survive in. The first world, and really got to understand, mortal life is a culmination of eons of dreaming and hoping, and if it were possible to sense it, waiting. Physical bodies are a biological transducer, all right? We're not just manifested from dirt. A process for procreation was carefully programmed into the molecules that are meticulously arranged in these massive proteins that make up the human body. The spirit inside this body is always elf aware, okay? But its ability to sense and interpret the universe is truncated by the physical body to which it is attached. For instance, you don't hear all the frequencies. You sure don't see all the frequencies. Your nose and mouth make up this incredible chemical analysis factory where you can sense very, very minute changes in chemistry. Your skin can even interpret infrared energy in varying degrees. It's how we sense texture on things, heat and cold, and the nerves on our fingers give us the ability to sense various frequencies and vibrations. but we can't interpret the whole universe with our body. So the interpretation of the universe is truncated. Now, the spirit within also has a ability to sense time. Time is one of the unique things that makes humans unique. Among all the animals, all the beings on the earth, we're the only ones that can perceive time. So when I say that we exist in one of these worlds at a time, this is what I mean. World number one. World number one is that of work. That is hard work, like chopping wood, laying blocks, digging a ditch, mowing the grass. Hard physical work. There's something amazing about this mortal life in its simplicity. It requires, in this world, no mental exertion, just exercise. Like, that's why we work out. That's why we feel so good when we work out, because our mortal bodies are made to do work. We're made to do hard work. We're made to lift and to run and to throw and to dig and chop and hammer. It can be said that a spirit can fall into a state of disrepair or unexplained weakness or fatigue if we don't work. If you practice a sedentary lifestyle, you will get old. If you paddle a canoe or climb a tree or run a race, we have a good that comes from this. We exist in this world necessarily from time to time. I remember one time I was had the boys out and we were picking potatoes. We had planted some potatoes in the spring. I think it was in maybe early June. You don't want to plant them too soon in Kentucky, because if it frosts, it will kill the plant and you get no potatoes. So we were harvesting the potatoes that had grown, and we had a wheelbarrow going down the row, and the boys were digging the potatoes out with a three-pronged fork in their hands, and they were putting the potatoes in a wheelbarrow, and we were going down, and we had a pile of potatoes, and my father-in-law walked around behind us, and he said, "Hey, your boys, they're missing a lot of potatoes here." Oh, we already had way more than we were ever going to eat. And I said, that's okay, because I'm not raising potatoes. I'm raising boys. Big difference. We do the physical work, and this is our reward for it. I found that the best way to clear a funk out of my head is to do some hard work, is to do some hard exercise, pound in a fence post or trim the hedges or wash the car. And by the way, it's even best if you do all this without even speaking. Just pour yourself directly into the work. It's quite amazing. World number one. World number two is that of learning, okay? It's not physical work, it's brain work. It's the good of this world is to study on something, to master mathematics, to master music, to master architecture. And I don't mean merely to read, I mean to study, to really ponder a thing. Any subject, it doesn't matter, history, religion, art, music. Once that knowledge is acquired, then the task of assimilating that knowledge into other subjects that have been studied before begins. Music is woven into architecture. Math is colored with acrylic paints or clay. It's like turning a thing over in your hands and looking at it from all sides, including time. It's about exploration. It's about discovery. It's about problem solving. That's the good of this world. And I've made most of the bulk of my living in this world, studying problems, problem solving for big companies. This is where I've made the best living that I've made. Yeah, I like writing books too, and I wish I could sell more of them, but that's the way it goes. I have a gift of being able to see into processes and machines and systems to the root of a problem better than anybody I know. I've just gotten good at it. I was good at it as a child, and I honed that ability over decades of experience to get very, very good at it. Why is that? It's because of this world number two. It's because of studying mathematics. It's because of studying relationships and logic. So you could make thousands of attempts in this world over thousands of years, millions of years. And the good of this world is to actually master a discipline. So great accomplishments and great changes in humanity have been done by mastering this world. World number three. World number three is that of mischief. Okay? The good of this world is to actually do something deviant and non-conforming. It doesn't have to be harmful. I mean, why on earth would we have such a world of existence, we ask? I didn't invent it. I'm just defining it for you. Humans are not the only sentient beings on the planet that have this ability. Dogs do it. Cats do it. Horses do it. Dolphins, whales, apes, they all have this ability to consciously do deviant acts. Okay? Your dog has torn up something and then looked up at you like, ooh, me? Yeah. I'm sure you've had it done. Defiance, violence, mayhem, vandalization, larceny, rape, and even murder have their rewards in this world. I have a friend of mine who's he's a criminal psychologist. I think he's probably passed on by now, but it was probably 10 or 15 years ago I interviewed him at length over a period of months. And he didn't want to sit down and talk about it for very long at one stretch. It's just to get the full picture. It was just dark. It was just dark, criminal psychology. So I asked him, why do we incarcerate bad people? I mean, why don't we just spank them and, turn them back out? Why do we have to put them in jail where they just learn how to be a better criminal? And I asked, does it help them? Do they rehabilitate? Do they get better? Does it punish them or make them not want to do their crime again? And the answer was quite astonishing to me. It awakened me, actually. He said, we do not incarcerate people to rehabilitate them. That's kind of a surprise to me. Although those services are certainly available to them while they're locked up. I asked him why there were so many prisons. Why, had we made a commercial business out of it? Wasn't there a conflict of interest? And I mentioned that America has more people in jail than any other country in the world per capita. We have about 2%. And he said, that's why our country's so safe. He explained that in any community, in any economic level, in any city, about 98% of the people will behave according to the rules of that society. That is to say, without having any laws at all. They won't steal, they won't fight, they won't pick up something that doesn't belong to them, they won't cheat in any way. With laws and training and knowledge of the law, much like traffic laws, people will get even better at it. They'll stay within the speed limit. They'll stay within the lines. They won't follow too closely. They get better at it because they want to. But they don't do it out of fear of getting caught. They do it out of an innate desire to have a peaceful society. They want order. They want safety. They want peace in their communities. They want this, and they see the sense in it. So they live their entire lives without so much as a single infraction on purpose of any law. I mean, you could say just about anybody violates the law, but not on purpose, not as a willful act. I mean, one trip to a traffic court, any traffic court in the country, I don't care which one you go to, go there for a month, every day for a month. You know what you're going to see? You're going to see the same people. You're going to see the same people over and over and over again. Why? Because there is this 2%. There is this 2% that just will not obey the law. They won't do what they're told. And it's not just because they're defiant. It's because it gives them joy. That's the good of this world, of world number 3. He said there are individuals that he interviewed that would punch someone in the face and the blood would just pour out of that person's nose and they would get an erection from inflicting that pain and that injury on that other person. How do you rehabilitate that? You cannot, because this is the good of this world for them. And sex is also a large part of this world. Sexual energy, gratification, it's the core of this world. And both sexes participate. But there's a point at which people naturally fall out of this world. They get old, they get fat, they make themselves so unattractive that they no longer participate. And this has nothing to do with love. It only has to do with sex, although young people are easily fooled into thinking that sex is love. World number 4. World number 4 is that of depression. Now, I've written many papers on this. It is a well-traveled and explored world. The good of this world is self-reflection. It's all the focus on you, yourself. When we enter the canyons of blue, as I call them, there is a transition from light to shade. It is cooler and darker. And if you go all the way to the bottom of the canyon, it can get quite dark and quite cold and quite hopeless. Whenever we come here, we bring with us a long script that we have written ourselves. It is filled with stories and lessons, but most of the time, they are locked away in another language. I mean, you didn't speak English during your last existence, you know. Not very likely, anyway. As far back as you could possibly remember, you've been sentient because that is the image upon which you were made. But this world of depression is one that can be traveled and can be escaped. And the last, world number 5, is that of a celestial glory. It is a place of safety and platonic love. Obviously, it would be the end of any human race if we all went here and stayed. There are many times that mortals step into this world and out of it, and most of the time they forget about it pretty quickly. There are days when everything goes right. You get a high grade of a test, you get married, you have child, all these things. This is a great celestial feeling, but it doesn't stay there. We have a tendency to bounce back and forth. We emulate this, but it's very difficult to do in mortal life. It's well known in the universe and is also used by evil men to deceive. The only reason it isn't widely known is because these chord progressions elicit warm feelings of mercy and charity in people. And we like to be charitable. We like to be merciful. This is America Free Radio, and I am the voice of the revolution. I'll be here every Wednesday night at 8 p.m. Don't forget about the WowWeTell app and pick up my books at Amazon. And please visit at brooksagnew.com. brooksagnew.com. You can learn about where I'm lecturing and different things that I'm working on all the time. And I'm coming to your city. If I don't, go to the website, fill out the form, and I will come to your city. We'll spend 5.5 hours together, and you'll change everything. We'll see you next week right here on America Free Radio. Don't go anywhere but here for the voice of the revolution. And thanks for being in the chat room. MacGyver and Hitchhiker and, of course, Pantry and, oh my gosh, so many names. Terry and Nikita. Or Nikia? Is it Nikia? It's hard. It's a long ways away over there. We'll see you next week. Be good out there. And don't forget X Squared Radio on Sunday nights at AmericaFreeRadio.com. Thanks, and see you next week.